Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BTC sessions. I am here this morning for a live interview with Rodolfo Novak of OpenDime. Well, I'll let him explain a little bit about what the device actually is in a moment, but a method of cold storage to keep your Bitcoin safe and secure. I'm very excited to have him on, and I've tested out the OpenDime. I'm waiting on something called the Coldcard, which we're going to get into in a little bit. And yeah, Rodolfo, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Can you give everybody a little intro to who you are and what you do?
Hey, thanks for having me. So I started off in Bitcoin way way back then through the white paper and Slashdot, and we've I partner up with Peter, my business partner, and we've been making a lot of Bitcoin products for a long time now. Um, and our latest product is OpenDime, uh, this little USB stick.
Sweet. Awesome. I've got a few of those.
There you go. So it's a bare bond. We can get into it and later. And our new guy is coming soon. Is Coldcard. We can chat more soon too.
Awesome. Sweet. And so you didn't start with OpenDime initially. You had some other projects beforehand. Can you let people know where you were involved
Yeah.
before
So
OpenDime?
when we bumped into the Bitcoin white paper and the very early days of Bitcoin, we're like, okay, this is really cool. How can we make this usable by people who are not nerds like us? And so we started a company called CoinKite, and the idea was to create payment terminals, just like Visa terminals, um, that could do Bitcoin for both sort of like a buying and selling Bitcoin at the cashier, or for paying for stuff. So we created the first Bitcoin debit card, really, and with that, people could just go and use it. We had them in, I don't know, 60 countries, and um, they were pretty much like the things were sort of like going everywhere, but we didn't want to run a centralized system. It's just not like who we are and what Bitcoin is. So we sort of abandoned that project
Fair enough.
and started making something that we want to make. We were sort of like, when you have some success in a centralized product, you sort of become like a prisoner of the project, especially with web-based systems. We had created a hardware security modules for that system, the first one ever. There was a lot of first one things ever that we made for Bitcoin, because you couldn't find anything. You couldn't find terminals, couldn't find HSMs. We were the first BIP32 wallet in scale.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
or blockchain.email and all that stuff. Um, we created like some pretty cool multi-sig schemas. Um, but we sort of like started becoming a little feature creep. We had too many things going on, and we wanted to just like focus, and OpenDime sort of became that focus.
Awesome. And so let's get into a little bit about what the OpenDime is, what it does. I've tested it out, and then I've explained it to some people, and just sometimes it can be difficult to explain for those that are new to Bitcoin what the difference between something like this and a regular wallet on your phone and a hardware wallet, like the difference between them all. So what is the OpenDime and what does it do that other products do not do?
So the idea was, how can I make Bitcoin physical? Right, like, not, but there were a lot of things out there, like cautious coins and paper wallets. These things are all fun, but they are not mediums of exchange. You can't trust a cautious coin. You can't, because the private key was made by somebody else, and that's an inherent challenge with crypto. Is you have to enable the owner to create his own keys, right? His own private key pair. So We were trying to sort of like, and we've been prototyping with like physical Bitcoin for like ages, but we just couldn't come up with something that we felt like it was it. Right? We tried the metal stamping. We've tried the coin cell battery cases. Tried all kinds of cool stuff. And there were sort of like three things we wanted to do. We wanted to make something that is sort of the trust is in the device, right? So you don't have to trust the owner of the device. You trust the device, right? So we did that by not exposing the private key to the creator of the private key.
Okay, yeah.
We did that provably, right? So you can prove that we did what we say we do, so that we can't have a rainbow table or anything like that. Sort of, we can't steal people's money. And then the second thing was, how can we make this in a way where you don't need apps, you don't need anything, so grandma can use, kind of thing, right? And we did that by creating this as a USB form factor where it just mounts as a drive. The secrets or the public address is right in that drive when you plug it in. And then the third thing was, how can we make it cheap so that in one way, right? So it's sort of disposable. And that's sort of like what we arrived to. This is the third generation of it. It's just a PCB. We did it as cheap as possible, and then there's like a little case to protect from ESD, and then there's a little hole on the back there that you push with a push pin to unseal it. And this is super easy to use. You stick it in a computer. It's gonna ask you to dump a few files on it. It's just for giving user entropy. For people that don't know what that means, essentially we're asking you to give us some random data so that we use your random data, our random generator, and some entropy from us together to create the private key. So that means if you're compromised, it doesn't matter because we're using some of our entropy. If we are compromised, it doesn't matter because we're using some of your entropy, right? And we use that together to create a private key that is safe and sound, right? Now, we don't show that private key to you. You go like, wait, where is my Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
The idea is the private key is unknown to anyone unless you break it and unseal it. Now, why is that? So when you put Bitcoin in this guy, you can give this to somebody else, and this other person can trust that you don't know and you cannot take the money back. Right, so we give back the idea of having a physical token, right? That is unique, scarce, and is not duplicable, right? So you can't have a copy of that private key anymore. Unlike a paper wallet, where if you create a paper wallet, you know the secret. So if you give that to somebody else, you could take the money back.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is, I could load Bitcoin onto the drive, more or less. Anybody can verify the amount of Bitcoin on the drive and know for a fact that nobody has ever viewed the private key. Therefore, when I hand this to somebody for payment in another way, say somebody wanted to pay me dollars in exchange for Bitcoin, they can know for sure that they're the only holder of the private key of the Bitcoin that is loaded on that device. And there's no way that I've copied the private key and I'll steal the money later.
Exactly. So the idea is, so we do this is not meant to be long-term hardware cold storage, right? For that, we're creating Coldcard. This is meant for transactions, right? So because listen, you could lose this. If you lose this, bye money, right?
Yeah, there's no backups, right?
There is no backups. If you destroy it, bye money, right? This thing is fairly resilient, but there's realities of no backup. Right? So the idea is you buy a bunch of these, you load amounts that are sort of reasonable for loss in each of them, and then you can have a pile of them that you use for payment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you do not have a good way of creating private keys for your cold storage, you could use one of these to generate a private key that is pretty safe and unseal it and back up that private key. And so you kind of have a happy compromise there. For $12, you have a super secure private key.
Yeah, and that's another thing about if you wanted to create it that way. So in creating a paper wallet, you have to essentially have more or less like load on something onto, if you want it really secure, you have to load something onto a USB stick and then put it into a computer that's not going to touch the internet moving forward. And so, but even in still using that USB, it could be compromised in some way, shape, or form. Whereas with an OpenDime, because you're using user entropy and your I don't know the word I'm looking for, your random number generator.
Yeah,
Is that
we use a security micro. One of the micros here is a micro made for security, right? And what that means is they often come with this feature called TRNG. It is a true random number generator. So it's a provable. It's like it's got like gates there to sort of oscillate and create real random numbers.
awesome?
Right? So unlike normal chips, which just have a random number generator, those are not provably random. There is a difference, right? But we don't fully trust even the true random generator. We use a bit of entropy that we provide that the manufacturer of the chip doesn't have.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Just
and then
that
we have
extra
the
layer.
user entropy provided as well that we don't know and the manufacturer of the chip doesn't know.
So you need a whole lot of collusion to really screw somebody.
Exactly.
Awesome. So now I believe that it's been refined since the original release,
Yes.
right? It used to be a stick in the middle that you stamp off. Now it's the push pin. What was the reason for the change?
So, I mean, I personally prefer the old one where we have the little tab that you break in the middle, just coolness factor of it. It's very satisfying to break a PCB board.
Yeah.
But that design had a few issues with like the placement of the parts, and there was too much open board space. It was also less strong than this design. This design is just one solid, 2mm thick PCB. And this one is a push pin. You have to like put the pin there and push it in, and it removes like a little resistor just to break the trace. And it's just more resilient. That's all. It's really strong.
Yeah, exactly. Now I wanted to touch on the other item you held up, the Coldcard.
Yes.
So I've gone ahead, I've pre-ordered one of those because I always love trying out anything new that's coming down the pipeline for storage. And I'm interested to hear more about how it works, how it differs from other things on the market now. So can you, I guess, enlighten myself and everyone, what is the Coldcard?
So this all started because we've always sort of tried to avoid creating a new hardware wallet because there's pretty decent products out there, but they just couldn't do what I want for myself. Right? That's often how things start. And then there's this other troop of nerds like myself who also wanted all these features. They're just not available, right? So that's essentially what we did. That's the source of why we created this. So we wanted to create a hardware wallet that could do a few things, right? There is one product out there that uses security micros, right? But it's not open source. And then we have another product out there that does not use security micros. I don't like any of those solutions, right? So we create a product that uses security micros, is a general purpose micro, and and it's open source. So people can actually go through it. And another thing too is I do not want to make altcoin integrations. So you know what? It's open source. Be my guest. Have fun.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we created this little guy. It's got like two little lights here. So OpenDime has a trust boot sequence that if you verify everything that's in it, it's going to be green. right? If you want to make changes to the source code, or if there is any compromise, it's going to be red. Danger, genuine, right?
Yeah.
Right on the front face. We also making the case clear so that you can see if it was tampered inside with extra parts. So we're really trying to prevent the evil made attacks. Which is, for people that don't know what that is, it's essentially, if you leave the device unattended, somebody can compromise the guts of the hardware to essentially fish your keys out, fish your pin out, or sort of try to do some attack where they come back later to retrieve what they recorded in a hardware alteration or something like that.
Yeah.
So we made it clear. You can see what's inside. There is the 2 LEDs. And the way we built the board, it'd be very hard for them to solder and sort of try to temper that. Now, we went a step further. In the boot sequence, the device, it's going to ask you, when you create the pin, you're going to create a pin prefix. So let's say, 1 to 6 digits. And then the device is going to give you 2 words. Those 2 words are essentially anti-phishing, because if you don't recognize those 2 words from the setup time, the device has been compromised. Even if it was perfectly, even if it's still beautifully doesn't look compromised, if it's not giving you the right 2 words, it's okay, because now you have to put the pin postfix. So you have to give another 1 to 6 digits of pin again, a different pin. So there's essentially 2 pins. One pin unlocks the 2 words, and then the second pin unlocks the wallet.
Yeah.
So we really sort of, have you seen websites like CoinKite used to have this, where you put in your password, right? And if you don't see, if you don't see an image you recognize, you don't go ahead and put your password.
Yeah.
Same idea, right? And those 2 keys are unique to each device, right? Those 2 words, are unique to each device. They're part of the security micro, the way we built it. So you can't, it's like good luck. You cost you.
So essentially, if you put in your first pin, you see 2 words you don't recognize, then you don't put in your second pin, because you're sure that the device is compromised, and anybody watching will not, because you haven't put in the second pin yet, anybody, if they're trying to watch and record or do whatever, they won't be able to access any information after that first pin.
Yeah, if you don't see the 2 words, as we like to put it in our documentation, you should rethink your life's choices.
Awesome. So take me through the process of how, I guess, I have a couple questions about the Coldcard. So setup itself, is it going to be similar to other devices in that you'll get your whatever number of word phrase?
You get the device. It's going to ask you to set up the pin first, right? We're going to send the devices already pre-set up from factory, right?
Okay.
If you're paranoid, by all means, you download source code, review source code, and reset up the device yourself. We just don't believe most people can do that. So but it's there for you. So, and we're also going to have ways for you to verify the device with, on the web, so that, you can, check the device against our stuff. So essentially kind of remote attestation-ish. There's a lot there that can be done. But anyway, so you get the device, you set up the first pin, you get given the 2 words, you set up the second part of the pin, and then you essentially get, like an empty wallet. Well, there's no seeds yet in there, right? And then it's going to, generate new wallet. You create a new wallet. Now, you write down your 24 words. We check that the backup is right. Great, you have a new Bitcoin wallet. Now it gets more fun. So now you can generate a second wallet, what we call a distress wallet.
Oh, I like that.
So you have a second wallet that you set up. You can, and there's going to be a way for you to kind of choose if you want to set this second wallet as a second wallet or as a distress wallet. If it is set up as distress wallet, if you put this different pin, you end up there.
So plausible deniability. If somebody's trying to steal from you, you can load it with like $100 or some amount that.
Yeah, no, you put a decent amount, so it's believable, and okay, fine. And then there is the third thing that I'm really excited about, which is a brick pin.
A brick pin. Oh, so you can brick the whole device.
If it's, you have to analyze your situation, but let's say you have a backup somewhere else. You were in a country where, I don't know, like your government became evil, and like you already have your backup in a different country, and you need to cross the border, and you forgot to wipe the thing, or where agents are running after you, or whatever it is. You power this up with a battery or whatever, and you just type in the pin, you confirm, boom, device bricked.
Wow,
and
that's nice.
We write zeros and then some random stuff on the security micro. Like, it is totally irreversible. It's as good as new.
That's awesome.
And then
I was going to ask. So when you're actually utilizing the device, what's the interface like? Is it corresponding with something like is it a desktop app, or is it just how
we don't want apps, and I may lose a small part of the market because I don't want apps, but you know what, just like OpenDime, the idea is this is open source, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty certain that the guys from Samurai Wallet will build integration right away. We are going to probably build integration with Electrum ourselves. But the beauty is we're building this with SD cards.
There we go.
For two reasons. If you want to have a real cold wallet, real cold, you never plug it on a computer, ever, right? The current solutions out there don't do that. Now with this guy, you plug it in with a USB battery pack, right? Mm-hmm. If you never want to connect this to a computer. You bring in the transaction you want to sign on an SD card. You put it in. You sign the transaction. You take it out. You put it in your computer, and you broadcast it.
Oh, okay. So the device never has to touch.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Now, the other reason why I have an SD card is my personal pet peeve is backups. I want to be able to have encrypted backups that I don't use a computer that could be compromised to encrypt the backup. Right? You can't encrypt by hand.
Yeah.
And you don't want to put your words in plain text somewhere either, right? So how do you do that? Well, this guy will do it.
That's awesome.
You encrypt your backups, and you have some SD cards distributed around the world, and problem solved.
That's great. So what's the timeline on the Coldcard? Like where is it at? How soon can people grab one?
We've already ordered, so we're final on the BOM, which is the parts, right? So we've ordered most of the parts already. Some are still coming. A good chunk of the firmware is already done. There's still a bit more to do, but that doesn't impede on the hardware part. No, we were going to ship like this. But then, we decided, what? Let's add a case, cost a few more bucks, but this is just a prototype of a case. We're working with the factory now to make a case. So things are moving. It still looks like we're going to probably ship around the end of Q2.
Okay. Yeah.
So that it's around that time. Being hardware, you never know when parts get stuck in customs, or somebody screws up a run of plastic or whatever. So I'm not promising no delays, but it's coming. We're almost sold out of the first batch, the pre-sale first batch, and we're running that quantity only. Mm-hmm. And then we're gonna get feedback from people. I'm sure there'll be lots.
Yeah.
And we either do another run of exactly the same, or we might have to make some changes. Right? You never know.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get mine. I already did my pre-order, so I'll definitely make a video on it when
Yeah,
I
no, I mean,
come to
if
visit you.
if people, there's still a few. If you want to do your pre-order, I highly recommend doing it now, because when this thing comes out, it's going to be cool. You're going to want it. It's going to be sold out. So I know this because this happens all the time with OpenDime. People want it. It sells out all the time, and then you can't get it. So just go to opendime.com/store, and you can pre-order both OpenDime but also Coldcard there. We still don't have a website ready for this or a store for this yet. And that's where you can get like hats and all that crap that we sell too.
Awesome. That's great. Now, I did want to get into, I guess, some general questions for you. Just your thoughts on the Bitcoin space as a whole, and kind of where we're at, and I guess your eyes to the future, what you think is coming down the pipeline. So, I guess one of my first questions regarding this is, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing Bitcoin going forward?
Um, well, I mean, let me just do a disclaimer here, because I am an official Blockstream sheet certified, verified.
That's awesome.
I'm kidding. I don't take any paychecks from them. But so, I mean, that's a that's a pretty big, broad question.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think now one of the good things of being in a post correction price place is that people can actually focus and get shit done.
Yes,
Right?
I love that.
I mean, you know, it's a huge challenge when the price is super high or on a rally. You know, everybody wants to do interviews. Everybody wants to, you know, like conferences, and you get contacted by all kinds of people wasting your time about new products, and it's crazy, right? Because you have this thing that just keeps on gaining momentum, and price goes up, and it's like, hey, I want to make money too, you know, and whole mainstream comes in, and but anyway, so it's hard to focus. Um, one of the challenges we had was, which was pretty rough, was, you know, the cost of transactions. Um, you know, it's very unfortunate that you know, there's a lot of people who build business models on things that Bitcoin never promised to fix, and then, you know, they make noise to sort of, you know, solve the problem in a quick and dirty way, which is not okay when you have,
Yeah.
you know, when you're creating something that's supposed to be the future of something.
I
Um,
noticed your No 2X sticker up in the corner there.
that's right. I don't know where my USF hat is. Probably downstairs. um, so what happened was, you know, we needed more throughput capacity, but, you know, of course, everybody understands that you can't raise block size forever. So let's just fix from the beginning with a different solution, which is L2s, like layer two solutions. And also, SegWit increased the throughput capacity by a lot, more than double, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, we've had higher than 2 MB
Right.
blocks at this
And, you
point.
know, the fake skepticism that there was around SegWit was pretty fascinating. And this brings me to why I think a lot of the future problems now are going to be different. I think a certain level of trust in the core developers, and the idea of fixing it right the first time has sort of been set in now. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't trust that, you know, the solution that you're claiming is going to do what's going to," you know, because look, the proof is in the pudding, right? Um, it did what it was supposed to do. I mean, Bitcoin is almost free again to transact. It's so cheap, you know.
Yeah.
Some days I go, really? I mean, like, I feel like I'm a few years back.
Well, and the thing is too, I think a lot of people tend to be impatient. Like a problem will happen, and we'll say, you'll hear, okay, well, here's the proposed solution. And then when it's not immediately available and immediately working, because it's gradually rolling out and these things take time, some individuals tend to get all up in arms and point and say, see, it's not working. And then you can go back to those instances and go, oh, well, I mean, I think you were a little quick on the trigger there. I mean, it does take time for these things to happen. And I feel like there's a very large lack of patience.
I think that a lot of the lack of patience and some of it's this multiple attack angle here. There is like honestly, like some people who are honestly sort of impatient, and they're not technical people. Most of the people who had an issue with the solutions were non-technical people. Engineers know that it takes time to make things. It's like there is no magical button on the keyboard that just creates the solution, tests the solution, deploys the solution, fix the bugs of the solution, right? You actually need time to build, and it's hard when a lot of people create vaporware companies, and they have unsound business models, and they take a lot of VC money, and then they're under pressure to perform. And I can understand that, but Bitcoin doesn't care about your business model.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Bitcoin, people fail to realize that Bitcoin, the protocol, doesn't owe anyone anything. Right?
There's a sheer amount of incompetence, because most of the quality people don't want to work for some of these big Bitcoin companies, right? They are working their own stuff. They want to work on the protocol. So, Coinbase made themselves not be able to spend, I don't know how many millions of dollars, just because they didn't know how to manage UTXOs. BitPay was adding I don't know how many kilobytes to every transaction, the amount of extra crap they were adding to the transaction, because it just didn't know how to design transactional database. It's so you have these companies that have huge weight in terms of mind share, right? Advocating for things they're just simply not competent enough to understand. Mm-hmm. And that creates, and that creates more grief and creates more angry users, and everybody needs somebody to point fingers to, and then we end up where we were a few months ago, in a nuclear war with people that don't really understand tech.
Yeah, well, and a big portion of it was the fact that, like you were saying, unnecessary data being tacked onto transactions. When companies that have such a large share of transactions are not optimizing those transactions, they're not the only ones that are then getting screwed by that. The entire ecosystem is getting screwed. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to think of blockchain. I think it was Trace Meir that mentioned this. It was a great analogy. You have to think of Bitcoin blockchain as extremely expensive real estate, right? It's Manhattan, right? So you're not going to be wasting space there, putting warehouses in the middle, besides Central Park, right? You have to figure out how you deal with your management of scarce resource. So, you put the bare minimum on the part that is expensive, and then you create clever ways of linking that and making sure that the other stuff is also protected, but is outside of the scarce space.
You build up instead of out.
You look at Lightning Network; it does beautifully that. It's actually for the amount of complexity that the thing is, it's still amazing to me that it actually works. It's a pretty complex system. Mm-hmm. And it's working great. The thing is fantastic. You have, open timestamps from Peter Todd works great too. It's a simple JavaScript thing that you just hashes your data and sticks it in a transaction. Is it ideal? Maybe not. Is it a good solution? Sure. If your data is worth money, right? So if you're a bank and you hash your whole database, everything, right, into one tiny little hash, right? And you stick that in a transaction, and even if that costed you $1,000 per hour, it's still nothing. Yeah. It is nothing for a bank to protect its data through to just sign their stuff, for $1,000 an hour. It costs nothing.
Yeah.
They pay more in toilet paper.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's all like, I think we're finally getting to a point now where, a lot of technical people are starting to understand economics, which is not something that is pretty common, right? Like, there is no economics requirement in your CS degree,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But the opposite is true too, right? I mean, like, people who understand economics have no idea about the tech.
Mhm.
So, Bitcoin really merged the two, and we're starting to see now, that to me is one of the biggest things now. There was a huge challenge. It's starting to become a little bit more, it's starting to be overcome. It's the idea that, like, the people making things, investing in things, running things, are starting to understand both, because Bitcoin is both, is economic code.
Yeah, it's this smashing together of two worlds, and
Yes.
people are having to deal with it.
Yeah, you can't have the two smashing together and not get some sparks, right? Like, there's gonna be, collateral damage in the.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
uh,
I wanted to ask you. So I wanted to ask you if, not if, but what's how many, depending on what you feel like bringing up, but what are some of the more exciting projects in the pipeline that you are excited to see outside of what you're working on? So,
Actually, there's a few. I mean, and there's a few. It's more like growth too, right? So, I mean, Lightning is one of them. It's I want to see atomic swap happen for real.
mhm.
I think it's insane. It's idiotic that we're using actual, like, centralized exchanges to do trading. The next step is, but it's not a simple problem, and it's not a throw blockchain at it problem, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
doing proper atomic swapping and figuring out how to do that at speed, and scale, so that you can have real trading happening, is a challenge. But there's a few people working on it. Can't remember the name of the project now. Um, there is a Tumblebit and Joy
Mhm.
Markets. I think privacy is something that needs to be, can't be overlooked. Um, what
That's
else?
also that's going to be a big challenge, I think, coming forward. That I get the feeling that that fungibility may be the next scaling debate, more or less, because I mean, fungibility, like I'm talking about on
Yeah, no, I understand.
the base layer, that comes at the expense of transaction throughput a little bit, doesn't it? Like it
It's
may.
funny. It's like every discussion comes back, but comes back just slightly different. Fungibility was like something being argued in 2012, like in 2011. It's, that's when people were trying to think, like, I can't remember the exact year, but we're talking about, like, flagging transactions and coloring transactions, and um, what was it, blacklisting transactions. So none of this stuff is going to happen, because what we have now is a pretty resilient distributed system, right? So you have different actors with different incentives playing the network now. It's big enough now that if my country says no, because they could coerce a Bitcoin exchange to say no to transactions, right? A government, I'm sure they already are tagging transactions with Coinalytics or things like that, right? And then I'm sure they will go to exchanges. They will say, like, no to this, or when they do it, let me know so I can arrest them, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
The beauty of Bitcoin is that, you can just, you brick your device here, you travel with your words to another country, and you do geographic arbitrage, and you just find a different place, and you just you do your fungibility in North Korea.
Yeah, right.
You know? it's and that's going to be the reality. We're going to have to rethink how a lot of things are done, even in politics and taxation and everything else. You're going to get to a point where you can't. You're going to be able to always go after the low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
kind of like, like TV piracy, right? I mean, they can do all kinds of trying to block things, but at the end of the day, people find a way, right? So then you have to figure out new business models and new ways of handling the tax collections.
Yeah, I think it's people are really going to have to grapple with that, and I mean the notion of borders with money is already completely moot. Like,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the rubber hose problem, right?
yeah,
You're going to have to find places where the rubber holes won't happen, right? Where you're going to have to find ways of decentralizing the signing authority, and I don't know, you create communes. I don't know. People have to figure out ways of not being coerced.
Yeah, absolutely.
That to me is the long-term challenge.
And now on the other side of things, so we talked a little bit about stuff you're excited about. What do you think people should steer clear of and or just ignore in the coming years?
I mean, I did promise myself that I wasn't going to talk about big cash anymore, or big trash. But I'll give one last sign off. It's every time you have like a Jesus figure on anything, it'll steer clear. If there is a person who represents something as the final authority of it, or as this sort of this preacher, it's a dogmatic system, and get out of it. I feel really bad for the people who followed this person and bought a bunch of this garbage coin, because like most of the people I know with 2 brain cells dumped most of their bit trash to either buy more Bitcoin or to pay taxes, which was a very clever way. A lot of people use the gift of the big cash to pay for taxes. And the irony of that is just beautiful.
Yeah.
I am a. It's great for people to fork the system, do things, try things, do it. This is the amazing thing about a true free market, right? Like, do your thing, try your scam, do whatever you want, right? But don't expect the people around to just be quiet and let you just do your scam.
Yeah, I mean that's again part of a decentralized system, and equating things like free speech with that. You can do whatever you want, but you're not immune to people calling you out on what you're doing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So,
and I think a lot of people are catching up to it. I mean, the price of big cash is it's in the toilet, and it's going to keep on going that way. This thing. Listen, when you have like a small group of people with like a decent amount of wealth to play out their long con, this thing could linger forever, because they will buy back their own coins being dumped, so that the price stays reasonable. They can do all those things because they have the means, but it doesn't really matter anymore. That's the thing. I think most people are just hangover from this whole bit trash episode, and ready to move on. It's to me the biggest sort of the biggest attack that they did was like making sure developers are wasting their time arguing as opposed to coding. So
yeah,
that to me is the biggest sort of damage they cause, is just wasting everybody's time for 6 months. And that's it. Like, most people are just done talking about it. It's silly, right? I mean, you have the person who has probably some mental issues, or I don't know, like some ulterior motives. It's going to be loud, and I'm done.
Yeah, I think most people have kind of just started to. It's just noise. It's not super relevant anymore, and I'm very glad to see that shit is getting done again. Exactly. People are keeping their minds in the right place, and if other people want to build different things, then that's cool.
Do it.
But
great. Make a fork. It's it's fun. Like, like I forks used to be fun. Remember Doge?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Bring back the Doge forks. They did actually a great service to Bitcoin. They attracted a lot of people in. That's why it's fine, right? I mean, even the blockchain bullshit. You have all these companies trying to build things that do not need blockchains for, and sprinkling blockchain won't make your company, do better, or if anything, is a very inefficient database system. But one thing that they do is they bring more people into the space,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
they
absolutely.
bring a lot of VC into the space. They bring a lot of devs into the space. People want to play with this stuff. Bitcoin is not easy to develop too. So let them break things in this, whatever barbecue point, and then come back and eventually you get into the big leagues, right? That's what Bitcoin is, the big leagues. It's where the proof of brain is.
I like that. Now, before I close out here, I always ask this one kind of final question of everybody. And it's pretty broad, so you can be as short or lengthy as you want with your answer. But what does Bitcoin represent to you?
Um, hmm. I mean, it really brings me back to my first Bitcoin transaction. It was like, what the fuck? It really was, because maybe this is more for people who are more technical than not. Is the idea of sending value, like trusted value, from A to B without anything in the middle digitally. It is a very it's a reality altering occurrence, right? And that to me changes everything, right? If it's Bitcoin, if it's not Bitcoin, the long term, whatever it is, we solved the problem. Sending money from A to B without anybody in the middle. Um, it, and I can only see this. I'm very biased because I've been using legacy systems all my life. Right,
Mhm.
I had a great experience with inflation in Brazil as a kid. So I can see, the soundness of money and all the economic aspects of it. But to me, the tech of it, the idea of sending value from A to B without trusted parties is what Bitcoin is. It's finally a way for humanity to trust each other remotely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty good way of summing it up there. Now, I did want to take a second to say thank you once again for coming on. I was really glad to see that you were able to make it. And where can people find you, whether it be anywhere online or websites or anything you want to throw out there? It's yours.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. You make great videos, and we need people like you who can explain technical things to the average person. Like,
Thanks, man.
you guys make Bitcoin adoption happen. Extremely grateful for that. So you can find me on Twitter at NVK November Victor Kilo. You can find OpenDime at opendime.com. Coldcard, it's going to be coldcardwallet.com. But you can buy Coldcards and OpenDime's on opendime.com/store. Both have Twitter accounts. We mostly release all the updates and everything on Twitter. Either, like, I normally retweet the things from OpenDime and Coldcard accounts. Go read the white paper, bitcoin.org. White paper's there. Burn your statues. Don't follow famous people.
Yeah, awesome. Great advice. Well, Rodolfo, thank you very much again for being on, and everybody that's watching or everybody that watches this after the fact when you finish work today, thank you so much for being here. Hit like and subscribe, and give it a thumbs up. I will see you guys next time on the BTC sessions.